Jason Statham looked Paul Walker straight in the eyes that afternoon and said something so cruel that the entire production crew went silent in less than a single second. But what Jason Statham did not know was that Paul Walker had been waiting for this exact moment for almost 2 years, and the keys he was holding in his hand were about to turn the most arrogant action star in Hollywood into the quietest man on that racetrack. The afternoon sun hung low over the private testing facility just outside of Palmdale, California. The desert wind carried the smell of hot rubber and burnt fuel across the open tarmac. A row of high-performance vehicles sat lined up against the gray fence, their engines ticking quietly in the heat. The crew had gathered for what was supposed to be a routine driving rehearsal for an upcoming action sequence. Cameras were not rolling yet. The cinematographer was still adjusting his lenses. The stunt coordinator was reviewing safety paperwork on a folding table. Nobody expected what was about to unfold. Paul Walker stood near the edge of the track wearing a faded gray racing shirt, dark jeans, and a pair of driving gloves tucked into his back pocket. He held a small set of keys in his right hand, turning them over slowly between his fingers. There was something quiet about him that day. Something steady. He had spent the entire morning checking the cars one by one, talking to the mechanics in low tones, asking technical questions that most actors never bothered to learn. The crew respected him for it. They always had. But not everyone on that set shared the same admiration. Jason Statham arrived 20 minutes late, walking onto the tarmac with a confident stride and a half-finished cup of coffee in his hand. He was dressed in tactical pants and a black t-shirt that hugged his arms. He laughed loudly at something his assistant said, then handed her the cup without looking at her. The man who had built his entire career on motorcycles, fistfights, and high-speed chases moved across the lot like he already owned it. Several of the crew members looked up, then looked away. They had seen this version of Statham many times before. He walked over to where Paul Walker was standing, glanced at the keys in his hand, and let out a small laugh. It was not a friendly laugh. It was the kind of laugh that carried something underneath it. A few of the mechanics noticed. The stunt coordinator glanced up from his clipboard. Paul Walker did not move. He simply stood there with the same calm expression he had worn all morning, watching Jason Statham approach without any visible reaction. Jason Statham stopped a few feet away and tilted his head. Then he said the words that would echo through that crew for years afterward. He said that Paul Walker was just a pretty face without any real talent. He said that the only reason he was on that franchise was because the producers wanted someone the cameras would love, not someone who could actually drive. He said it loud enough for everyone within 30 feet to hear, and he said it with the kind of casual confidence that suggested he believed every single word of it. The tarmac went silent. The mechanics froze. The cinematographer turned his head and pretended to adjust his viewfinder. The stunt coordinator set down his clipboard very slowly. Even the desert wind seemed to pause for a moment. Paul Walker did not flinch. He did not raise his voice. He did not even change his expression. He just looked at Jason Statham for a long, quiet moment, the way a man looks at a chessboard when he already knows the next 3 moves. Then he glanced down at the keys in his hand, smiled to himself, and said only one thing in return. He said very quietly that the track was open if anyone wanted to test what real talent actually looked like. Jason Statham laughed again, louder this time. He told Paul Walker that he had been driving stunts for over 20 years. He told him that he had handled vehicles in places Paul Walker had probably never even heard of. He said the offer was almost cute. The crew watched in absolute silence. Some of them looked at the ground. Some of them looked at each other. Nobody said anything. Paul Walker simply nodded once, walked over to the silver coupe parked at the end of the line, and opened the driver's side door. What Jason Statham did not know, and what almost nobody on that set knew, was that Paul Walker had been quietly competing in professional grade time attack events for nearly 2 years. He had been training privately with one of the top driving coaches in Southern California. He had been logging laps at this very same track, alone, on weekends, when nobody was watching. The keys in his hand belonged to a car he had personally helped tune. Every bushing, every alignment setting, every gear ratio had been adjusted by his own hands. This was not a movie car. This was a precision instrument. And Paul Walker knew exactly what it was capable of. Jason Statham followed him toward the line, still smiling, still confident. He climbed into the matching coupe parked beside Paul Walker. The stunt coordinator looked up nervously and asked if they were really going to do this. Paul Walker nodded once. Jason Statham waved the question off and shut his door. The mechanics quietly stepped back. Someone radioed the safety crew. The cinematographer finally lowered his camera, sensing that whatever was about to happen was not for the cameras anyway. The engine started. Paul Walker rolled down his window, looked over at Jason Statham, and said one final thing. He said that the only thing he was going to ask was for Jason Statham to keep up. Then the rear tires lit up, the silver coupe shot forward, and the rehearsal that was never supposed to be a competition turned into one of the most talked about private moments in that crew's entire career. Paul Walker drove that car the way most people breathe. Effortlessly. Naturally. Without thinking about it. He hit every apex. He nailed every breaking point. He danced through the technical section of the track in a way that made the mechanics stop and stare. Jason Statham, for all of his experience, fell behind on the very first sweeping turn. By the second corner, he was already 2 car lengths back. By the third lap, he was nearly half a straight behind. The radio crackled with confused voices. The stunt coordinator stood completely still, watching the silver coupe carve perfect lines through the track like it was painting them. When Paul Walker pulled back into the pit lane, he stepped out of the car, removed his gloves, and placed the keys back into his pocket without saying a word. Jason Statham pulled in nearly a full minute later. His face was different now. The confidence was gone. The smirk was gone. He climbed out slowly and looked at the ground. The crew watched in silence as he walked over to where Paul Walker was standing near the fence, drinking from a water bottle. Jason Statham did not say what everyone expected him to say. He did not apologize. He did not joke his way out of it. He simply asked, very quietly, where Paul Walker had learned to drive like that. Paul Walker looked at him for a long moment. Then he answered with the same calm voice he had used all afternoon. He said that talent was not something you announced. He said it was something you proved when nobody was filming. Jason Statham did not respond. He walked back to his trailer alone. The crew packed up early that day. Nobody on that set ever brought up the words "pretty face" again. In the months that followed that afternoon, the story slowly traveled through the racing community before it ever reached Hollywood. Track engineers spoke about it in pit lanes. Driving coaches mentioned it in private lessons. Mechanics passed the story from one shop to another the way old men passed down quiet legends. Jason Statham never addressed it publicly, and Paul Walker never brought it up either. But the people who stood on that tarmac remember it differently than any film they ever worked on. If this story moved you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more untold moments from the lives of people the world thought it already understood. Share this with someone who believes that real talent never needs to announce itself. And before you go, leave a comment below and tell us, when was the last time you watched somebody answer a cruel insult not with anger, but with quiet, undeniable proof? See you in the next one.